call our meeting to order at 5:04. Want to welcome everyone to the African American Equity Restoration Task Force. Thanks for joining us this evening. And we're going to start also with our roll call. So Tiffany, if you could take care of that for me.
We've got Mrs. Tanisha Fitzgerald-Baker,
Present.
Brandon Harding, Glenn McKenzie, Mr. Dave Miller.
Present.
There we go, present. Mr. Dave Miller, Dr. Bill Lyons.
Here.
Anderson Olds.
Here.
Ms. Deborah Porter.
Here.
Mr. Samuel Taylor.
Here.
And Mr. George Underwood.
Here.
Perfect. And then if you've had an opportunity to read over the minutes from our December meeting, can I get a motion to approve those, please?
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
So our staff reports, I'm gonna ask Tiffany Toombs to provide our staff report. And then, if you have any additional information to support that, if you let us know, and then add Brandon to the roll, please.
All right, hi everyone. Hope y'all is well. I first wanted to start with a quick update. So in April, I'll be attending the Just Economy Conference. It's a national conference taking place in Washington, D.C. during April 2nd through 4th. This event is really cool because it brings together on a national level both policy, business, and foundational leaders on top of like government leaders included in that mix to help build the economic wealth of the nation and like help people in terms of social mobility. And so for this conference, some of the topics, just so like people are like have an understanding of where I'm coming from. So some of the topics include the new CRA 101. So I know as a task force, we've had conversations about CRA dollars, so getting a further understanding of what that looks like, accessing capital, and more specifically what removing barriers to business creation and expansion looks like, building power, fighting displacement, and in regards to community stories. That's also a topic that we discovered and talked about there. The future of special purpose credit programs. So these are just a few topics, but moral of the story, a lot of these topics build on some of the topics of the framework that we have. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to apply some of the knowledge that we already have and some of the data that we have to be able to make it all work together more smoothly. So like I said, that event is coming up in April. And then, yes. So back in December, we weren't able to include this in our last report, but the city was awarded $8 million for the Safe Roads for All. The task force thankfully helped to submit another letter of support for that initiative. So $8 million came through, I think now the engineering department, and so we'll be working with them to see how we can help support their efforts.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, as for me, so we will be coming up on preparations for onboarding or kind of terms ending for a few of our task force members, all of which have the opportunity to serve another term if they so choose, but in the case that we do not, in addition to kind of some vacant positions that we do have, we need to kind of go ahead and start putting our minds on potential candidates that you guys would like for us to kind of have discussions with as staff members. What we typically do is do introduction meetings via Zoom, and it'd be great if some of the task force members, it doesn't have to be all of you guys obviously, but could kind of help with those introductory calls just to kind of get to know these candidates so that we can ultimately make a recommendation to Mayor Kincan, and she can take that or those recommendations to the city council for approval. So again, if you have some people in mind or have some thoughts about kind of some individuals that can serve the capacities that we do have available based off of our framework. So for instance, home ownership, I think we need a realtor on the task force. So look at it from that standpoint, and then just kind of send me some candidates or names of people that you guys think that we should begin meeting with, because we need to have names identified by May so they can go before city council prior to July 1, which would mean that they would be effective at that point. So
All right, so did we discuss reviewing the list of people who applied from the original pool?
Yeah, so we've taken that list, and there were a couple that were just not, good candidates just because they're not within the city or various other reasons. We had a couple that are no longer in Knoxville, so that list has been whittled down to a couple. So Jennifer Searle has sent out some new emails, or sent out emails to these individuals to ask if they would still be interested, and then of those that have responded said yes. So the list is declining a little bit, but that doesn't mean that we don't have options, obviously, but I think that just having a pool of applicants would be helpful, again, to fill in the capacity that we need them to help us progress forward based off of the framework and then future goals that we do have as, or that you guys do have as a task force.
All right, so the timeline then, you want to start your introductory meetings
April,
in April.
ideally, yeah. We
And,
would present it back to you guys in May.
all right,
You finalize your list before it goes to the mayor at the end of May. Hopefully she can vote on those members in June, or, make the recommendations to city council in June, which would then mean that it would be effective in July.
all right, so for our committee reports, actually this time, select members met with, and I hope I pronounced his name correctly, but Rob Breimer,
Yeah.
was close.
Yeah.
Community Solutions Collaborative, and we talked a lot about fair housing and equity, and those plans related to the city of Knoxville. So one, I thought it was a very, not just interesting, but informative and a pretty good exchange about our ideas and the give and take that comes along with integrating neighborhoods. We had discussion about the dilemma we're in as far as affordable housing, but also as a resident of East Knoxville, and I'll share my thoughts and give task force members an opportunity to share theirs. As a resident of East Knoxville, my concern was if I were to, I couldn't afford to move back. And so how do we keep the housing, the property accessible and affordable for those who were in the community, who have roots and ties and family in the community, but also still reap the benefits from integrating our community so that we can have more resource, more access to opportunities, and for balance there, the opportunity to circulate dollars within our community. So that's kind of where we were, and learn different strategies in other cities, but none are perfect. We discovered that as well. So I think what we're going to do ultimately, and I'm hoping that we can pull together our subcommittees and get some subject matter experts in the field to kind of support the strategies that are developed. But we have to figure out how to, one, educate the current community members that still have houses and property, how they can keep that, how they might be able to utilize their equity versus taking a quick buyout, right? Because that looks good, particularly if you're in some financial strain. And so does anyone else have something to share along the lines of the meeting that we had? Okay. Well, after this, you can share your feedback, but I know you had some interesting points you made, Brandon, about, I think it was 3 points that you made during the meeting about just kind of the dilemma and some things that have hurt the community. Even if they had some positives, ultimately it caused some harm as well.
Right.
Yeah. You can share?
Well, that was just expounding when we had the meeting, some of the things that affected our community as far as urban renewal, affirmative action, allowing people to work and live in other places outside of our community, which really was a flight of our dollars. So that was a double-edged sword, a lot of positives, but negatives, and also redlining, which kind of brought us to this position where we're at now. I think I spoke on the task force being created at a very pivotal time with downtown growth and the baseball stadium, and a lot of the property values exponentially increasing in East Knoxville. We really hit on a very important point to identify people in the community that already have a vested stake, and to educate them about how to hold on to it so that we can hold on to a little bit of our culture and really expand it where we're welcoming and not being taken advantage of in this environment.
And along those lines, we have to consider, and although it's great that property values are going up for those that own homes or have property, but let's just say we have a senior or a longtime family residing, and their home is paid for, but the property value goes up substantially. Well, you know what goes up with that, obviously, is the taxes. So I don't know the answer. So that's why we have these meetings and great minds join together to figure out maybe how we support them, because I think that also becomes tempting for one of those quick buyouts when all of a sudden you see this monumental tax bill, you know, compared to what you're used to paying possibly on a fixed income. And now you see this bill and you're like, oh, how am I going to manage this? Someone offers you a way out, you take it, properties, but there has to be some other options. I think we need to figure out that, and I was watching the news, and I think Hawaii is doing this. There's a group that is formed that is trying to help residents, almost the same thing that we're doing, maintain their homes and their property in that area. And so they have a grant foundation to help people to do that. And some of it is down payment, some of it is taxes, but it's different things that can support families who, you know, it didn't seem too big per family. But of course, if you have a lot of families in a lot of neighborhoods, it could be, but I think that's something we could entertain as well. Did you have anything to add? You recommend?
No, I think you covered for the most part. Rob, it was Rob, yeah. He was information gathering for the most part, so we had anything, and I did circle back and come to the event, had a while, and he broke out in focus groups and all of that. And so I guess my question would be, as far as the information that he's accumulating, how do we fit into that, if anybody knows?
Yeah, I think that, you know, like, once they provide the plan with recommendations back to the Housing and Community Development Department, you know, we work closely with Kevin DeBose, obviously, and I think that it would be a really good opportunity for us to figure out how we fit into that. I meet with Kevin next week, if I'm not mistaken, to discuss the strategic framework. And so it really just kind of segues into that and making sure that they are aware that we are looking at how to help support homeowners as well. And what that support looks like will just have to be determined once we know what the recommendations are. Yeah, so we'll just have to follow back once they get it.
I think to that point, as Rob mentioned, I think at both sessions that day, this is like literally the very earliest stages of this process for them. So that meeting was one of the first meetings that they've had with community members and stakeholders to begin this information gathering process. And so I would imagine that as this process goes on, there may be more conversations that are rooted in information gathering and or some, you know, substantive exchange of information as the plan develops, and then once it's kind of in draft form, also revisit it again. So I think there'll be multiple points of contact for this group throughout the process.
But even with Rob's activity, and we're talking about not just in that meeting, but before, one thing we have considered, and I think we need to consider and figure out a way to do it, is helping, you talk about educational piece to the community, but helping families understand, for example, wheels, we talked about being able to preserve property by having a wheel and pass that on. So as we move forward, I'm hopeful that we can create some kind of educational piece. For example, when I'm a member of the Knox Bar Association, one of the programs I brought to the Knox Bar Association was a program called Law Talk. And actually, the way it started, a group of black attorneys, we started doing this way back when. And then I moved it over and introduced it to the bar. And now for the last 20 years, it's been one of the most popular programs for the bar. And what it is they go into the senior citizens, O'Connor, every year and educate about wills in the state, that type of thing. And so I think there may be an opportunity for us to do something similar as an educational piece, you know, to the community, because black families, black and brown families own property. Some of it was lost or renewal. But for those who still have property, just knowing how to preserve that property And it goes along with knowing your options if you want to sell your property. So I think they go hand in glove. So I'll just put that out there because we talked about it briefly with Rob. We talked about it in this meeting. And so that's, I just throw my 2 cents out.
No, I think, and also, we probably don't have to wait till that plan goes through all the phases to start thinking about how we start the education piece, because some of that already exists and it's kind of consistent. So I think we can put that on the agenda probably by the time we finish planning, get started early fall, if not late summer, and put something in place, I think, and I see the urban league, so you just blinked twice. Obviously, I think with the urban league's focus, there would be a good partnership, and this would be a good facility to help educate as well as the O'Connor Center, and some other places in the community. But
No, if the urban league would, this would be the ideal place.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ms. McKenzie said yes. We'll go back.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys were reading my mind, and I really like that idea that you talked about, George, even with the Bar Association. But also, the county has a tax relief program for seniors, where seniors can apply, and I think if their income is at a certain, their income is at a certain level, then their taxes would be frozen. And I'm not sure all the intricacies around it, but that may be something that might be good for us to, maybe they can come out and present it to us very briefly. But that is an excellent program. And again, when we talk about education, does everyone know about that program? That's the other piece of it. And then also we know that a lot of times grandmother or somebody may pass away and there's a will or something, there's no will, and things are kind of in limbo with the property, and people are not aware that, hey, somebody's got to pay these property taxes. I mean, and so a lot of times properties in our community get tied up like that and end up going up on tax sales because people are just not educated on a lot of those things if they've never owned property and been responsible for paying taxes. So I do think the education piece is really key, and that sounds like a really good partnership with the Urban League. I'd love for us to explore that even more. They may already have something in place I'm not aware of, but really good dialogue and conversation around this.
Even if we could just have like a data education, it could be multifaceted. We can talk about that piece, we talk about the property tax piece, we talk about the realtor piece. That if you got property right now, property is high demand and you get exorbitant prices for your property. Even though ideally we will want black and brown folks to maintain the property, particularly in the footprint of urban renewal. At the same time, realities of situations,
Right.
you've got a $150,000 price appraised, but you can sell it for $350,000, $400,000. That's difficult for people not to do. So I think we can just
education's key.
just have one day to just educate on a lot of different.
Well, this is, okay, this is, I'm glad you brought that up, George. MD. I mean, for a while, the issue was that in the areas that were redlined and others, the properties weren't increasing.
Right. Now it's
stopping the ability to build familiar growth. So that it's a plus, except as you point out, the tax situation, but it's through the trustee's office that if there's an income level, I think it's in the 40s, they may have raised it a year for seniors, that if you make under that amount of money, you don't have, your value of your property go up, but your taxes won't. But you have to apply for it, you have to apply for it yearly.
That
And
needs
that
to be
gets a big
communicated,
issue.
that needs to be communicated.
Right, and it's a shame more people don't know about it, but
Right.
I know very few people who know.
Yeah. But that's a good opportunity.
Right.
We had spoke about the informational flyer. I think that is a great first step, and if we combine it with the day of education here at the Urban League, where myself or the committee, or I don't know, somebody get on that, where we can just compound all that information, get with the city, get with the county, what resources are available for our community to hold on to their properties, and that and tied in with possibly invitation for a day of information here in Beverly. I think that would be a great idea.
And if we may get somebody from the trustee's office to be here in person live.
I think this.
Yeah, so it sounds like, I'm very excited about this conversation. Sounds like we have some work for committee.
I'll go look at this paper.
That there'll be some tasks maybe for one or two of our committees to work on pulling this together. I think the conversation we're having now is like fantastic. Really like getting the wheels turning, I could tell, for a lot of people. And I know we kind of have a jam-packed agenda and a lot of guests who are here to present to us today, but it sounds like some really exciting work for a couple of our committees to maybe jump on and have something to report back maybe at our next meeting.
Look understood. All right, but we do have an agenda here that's pretty packed, but exciting. So we're going to actually, if no other thoughts or comments from committee members,
I have someone I wanna use as a thought leader.
go ahead.
Can't think of her name, her company's name. I met her last week in DC. She's based out of New York, but she does some affordable housing things, some grants that they do downstream wise to residents in New York to help with some of this. And so,
The federal grants,
say it again?
federal grants.
It's a mixture of
Mixture
federal,
of
state, and local grants.
Is it possible to connect her with our grant specialists and see if they can?
Potentially so,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to mention,
Yeah, no problem.
I have a business card and stuff, so
Okay.
she'd be a good contact, just kind of pick her brain.
Who would we want maybe for the project that we were just speaking about in terms of kind of putting together the educational information and working maybe in partnership with the Urban League or some other entities to, have a day or a few sessions or whatever. Is that something that maybe the investment and community engagement committees could work on together, or where do we want to see that? Who do we want to kind of task with leading that from a community standpoint?
Community engagement will
Okay.
lead it.
Perfect.
And I will send some ideas because we do have a vacancy for the
Right.
chair of that committee. But we'll iron that out.
Okay.
I think it should come out. All right, so, each speaker will have up to 15 minutes to address the committee. We'll allow some time for Q&A as well. We'll start with, is it Sheridan?
Yeah.
All right, Sheridan Smith, Program Manager with Renaissance Creation. And you are here to restore, or your vision is to restore blighted properties, correct?
Yes.
Absolutely.
We have a PowerPoint with like,
Oh,
show you if that
okay, is that set up?
is okay.
We hope it is.
Yeah.
We may have to speed through it to see how long the battery lasts on this.
Did the TVs come out?
Enough money, start pushing buttons.
It's just a power blessing.
I'm still thinking about it. Sure.
It's like church. There we go. All right.
All right.
I'm Sheridan Smee. I'm the Director of Operations with Renaissance Creations.
And I'm Gardner Smee. I'm the principal of Smee Busby Architects, and I serve on the board as the secretary. And we're glad to be here to tell you what Renaissance Creations does. I think we will mesh very, very well with everything we have just heard from you. We're small. We've been incorporated as a 501c3 for just 5 years now. But we're doing the work actually years before that without having the formal designation. We take homes that are blighted or abandoned or even condemned, usually houses that flippers won't touch because they're in such bad shape. And we work almost exclusively in East Knoxville. And we go in and we restore the home. And we then work with people from the community who wish to be back in their neighborhoods. And we sell them back to them without profit. So it is just at our cost. And we work with Pinnacle Bank to get people approved. And we consider ourselves very anti-gentrification. I'm sure you're all familiar with the phrase, and it happens, it's sneaky and it sneaks in and happens even when you would like to fight it. We would love to see the fabric of the East Knoxville communities restored. And the way that we do that is we go taking houses where there is no light on, it's a dead house, it's a hole, and we restore it and turn that light back on and turn it over to people that are from that community who will care for it. And
We work,
from there.
yeah, we work primarily with folks in the 80% AMI, the area median income. That's the low income bracket in Knox County. And we don't exclusively work with first time home buyers, but that is like our heart. That is who we're trying to get in houses so that they can then build that generational wealth and that stability. We're a tiny staff. We only have 4 people who work on the construction side of things, which is actually awesome because we have our own staff. We can fix things a lot faster than we were trying to hire out and get other contractors in. If you've had a project recently, you know that you just can't find a contractor these days. So we're lucky to be able to do most of the work internally. We hire local subcontractors for things that we need, like HVAC and plumbing. So we're still trying to make sure we keep it in the community. We feed it back in so that we're just growing our own economic, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, yeah.
So we started with really out any financial basis. People knew what Scott Branson wanted to do, and they would make him a personal loan and say, go buy this house with my money, fix it up, sell it back to the community and pay me back. And then they'd turn around and say, and I'm gonna give that money back to you again, go do it again. And so once we became a formal 501c3, we needed to actually raise some money so that we were no longer taking people's personal loans. So we have been raising money so that we have money in the bank and can pay the staff and work without those. I don't know that we're entirely done with some of those personal loans. We still have people that love to be involved that way.
Yeah.
But we are moving to be much more self-sufficient. The way, if you only have one person donating and you do one home at a time, then you're limited in how many homes you can affect. We would love to double, triple, and quadruple the staff and the number of homes that we touch.
And currently, we're entirely donation funded or self-funded by doing little odd jobs on the side to make sure we have the cash flow to keep doing these jobs. We have no grant funding, no federal funding. We would love it, but so far we just haven't been eligible for it because of the niche of what we're doing. It's just construction is tricky and working with governments is tricky. So we're still working on that. That is, hopefully in our future.
Some of the grants say, look, we want to know what are the next 20 properties you're going to buy. And we're like, we have no idea. We wait till one presents itself and we jump on it and buy it, and we wait for the next one. And so if we had $500,000 sitting in the bank, we could buy 20 properties when they presented themselves, but that isn't the way it happens yet because we're too small. But we're working toward being able to do that very thing.
Yeah. Here's some of our board members, just in case y'all recognize any of those folks. Yeah.
Bruce Charles,
We got a little video, if I can click the button, let's see. Okay.
So we got married in 2015. We were living in we were renting this apartment. It was a little cramped.
We've seen every city like Knoxville in this country have a growing affordable housing problem. And it's just going to get worse.
We believe in affordable homeownership. In the last 5 years, from January 2017 to January 2021, the average home value increase has been as low as 59 and as high as 94%, which means that the market is simply run off and left the value of some of these houses. Well, when that house is sold for that amount of money, and you're so far above the median level income in the neighborhood, you've increased the property values.
And so the houses that are renovated are often going up in value, and they're driving neighbors out of the downtown communities. Renaissance Creation's whole mission is to take abandoned houses.
Bring it back to life, turn the lights back on. Now the lights are on physically, but the light is back on in the fact that that house is now alive again. It's not something dead sitting on that street.
You certainly want to see the revitalization of the neighborhoods, but you want to keep that from driving existing neighbors out.
There are alternatives to the housing market just going crazy and people not being able to afford a home that truly want to be there. Not because they just want a house, because that's their neighborhood. You know, it's where they go to school, where they go to the store. That's where they want to raise their kids. But we want to give them a chance to be a homeowner as well.
Okay. Do you want to talk about our mission?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Our mission is to seek the peace of the city by restoring blighted homes and strengthening neighborhood communities in Knoxville. I think one of the coolest parts about homeownership is that when you give somebody that opportunity to have a home and not be victim to rent increases or evictions or, you know, anything that can happen when you're just at the whim of whoever your landlord is, you have that stability to then pour back into your community. We've seen with all our homeowners that when they get into a house that then like allows them, for example, we have a woman who wanted to teach violin and she wanted to teach it at a sliding scale so that she could serve any kid who wanted to learn. And having a home allowed her to then bring kids into a studio that was part of her house in the neighborhood and do that, provide those lessons for free or at a discounted cost because of her circumstances. Y'all know this, you talked about it. Affordable homeownership is just so important because otherwise you do have things where neighborhoods just totally get taken over. It's an influx of people from even out of state. It's an influx of developers from out of state, people who don't actually care about the heart of the community and the neighborhood.
You know, we go into a neighborhood and if they don't know who we are, we raise suspicions. You know, we go in with a group of white guys and girls and go in and start working, and they're naturally leery. But as they begin to understand what it is that we're doing, pretty soon we're helping other people on the street with other things that they need done at their homes, and we're touching several houses on the street. Scott has a huge heart. It's all about the relationship. I've heard him tell his guys, somebody wants to stop and talk to you, you stop what you're doing. You stop your work and you go have a conversation with them. Some kid comes by and needs his chain put back on his bike, stop your work and you go out and you put that chain back on the bike. We're about the neighborhood, we're about the people here. And it becomes that the neighborhood becomes a champion of what we're doing, and it's feeding on itself.
Yeah, I think that's part of this slide too. Yeah, part of what we do that I'm very proud of is that once you're a Renaissance homeowner, you are a Renaissance homeowner. And we stay in contact with you. When your roof is leaking and you need us to come and fix your roof, we'll come and do that. We'll talk to you about what you can afford, if we need to lend you the money to do it, or if we need to discount it. However, like we work with our people so that they don't have needs that are going unaddressed. Every single one, 100% of our homeowners, since we've been a nonprofit, I think to my knowledge, just since Scott's been doing this, is still in their house. There's still homeowners in the house that they originally lived in.
Zero failure rate. This has worked. People have told us it wouldn't work, but there's a very high failure rate. Now, by the time that we find the house, Scott has a list of people that are already asking him to do this for them. He picks the people that match the house to the neighborhood, and so far, he's hit 100%. They've all stayed, they've all become very stable.
Presentation, but how many houses have you done? Where have you done?
As a nonprofit so far, I think last I checked, we were around a dozen. The numbers are crazy, and Scott has worked on so many at this point that when I try to get him to sit down and write down all the ones that he's done just in his time working on houses like this, he can't. It's like dozens.
He probably did 20 before we became a nonprofit. So.
Where? In Knoxville.
Our main zip codes are 37914,
15, 20, 21, 17, and 18. So mostly east and north Knoxville.
If we're working on the west, it's because we don't have a house to work on, and it's not without profit.
It's profit that we
It's
then
to
put
raise
back
money that we
into
turn around and
the
put back into the houses
Yeah.
that we really want to work on.
Yeah, and building off what you were talking about previously with the neighbors, we get to know the neighbors. Every house that we have worked on, we've ended up doing side projects for neighbors on the street. The last house that we worked on, the neighbor to the right, we fixed her sidewalk, repaved it. The neighbor to the left, we tore down an old shed that she asked us to get rid of and hauled everything to the dump, and we just did it. We did one of them at cost and the other one for free. So we try to make sure that they feel like we're not just here for this house or these future homeowners, we're here for you in this block. So there's some pictures of volunteer work days that we've done. This was on the house that we completed last year. We had Alvin and Janine, the Cruz house, yeah. Alvin and Janine on the end there are the homeowners in that house, and they called a lot of their friends and family to come out and help too. And it was so fun because we just had more people than we actually knew what to do with. Yeah. So it was like it was more of a like community like event than it was even necessarily like hard labor. Yeah, it was a blast.
Some of you will know Kira Wyatt, and then Alvin's in the wheelchair, and this is the first time that we'd done a home for a handicap, and so it took in a whole different kind of design to make that work for them. But you'll get to see that house here in a little bit.
Yeah, here's some befores and afters.
We don't pick the colors. We let them pick the colors.
Yeah, this is a house on Wimple. It was really rough. It had a lot of water damage, and we essentially tore off the entire back of the house and rebuilt it. There's not a house that is too far gone for us. That is like
don't say that yet. So far. As an architect, there's a point when.
Yeah. And one of the things I also love about what we do is that it's not just a roof over your head. That is important. That's the base of what we're doing. We want to make sure you have stable housing. But what Scott does, what our crew does, is we really make it beautiful. We like preserve as much of the historic properties of the houses as we can, and we want it to feel like there's like dignity and integrity in where you live. Like when you have that, it's just a different thing. It's like your security is there, but also you have something you would be proud of. And then this is Cruz. We completed this last year. It was rough. It was really rough.
It was so bad that the guys had to wear respirators. I don't know if they've ever had to do that before.
Yeah, I don't know either.
The stuff they were cleaning up was that bad.
These are photos I took when I was willing to go in. Like this is after we already cleared it out a ton. We pulled out, I think it was 11 mattresses, 7 couches, and so many rats.
There were people living in it, and there was no running water and no sewer.
Yeah.
It was bad.
But even with the folks who were living in it, we were intentional about making sure that they were not just kicked out in this process, that we connected them with resources. We paid for one gentleman's storage unit while he was looking for his next housing. We drove everybody and transported all their stuff, helped everybody move into their next places when it came to it. Like we make sure that we don't want to leave anybody behind in this process. So yeah, there's the guys in house hazards.
You see he's taking down the studs.
Yeah.
And the studs, oftentimes in a house that old, the studs are that color because it was originally a coal burning house. And so it gets into the walls and the studs are all black when you open up, not because they're burned, just because they're coated with coal.
Yeah, and then this is Cruz. All this Cruz. But yeah, so there's some befores and afters because we finally got some good.
Dining room, kitchen. If you look at the one on the far left, you can see that that's a roll-in shower for a wheelchair.
Yeah, we made the whole thing. We took out walls. We made the whole thing to where he could get through with plenty of space on either side. There was just no like corner that he couldn't turn without feeling comfortable about it.
If you didn't catch it, this is my daughter. And one of the things my daughter's good at, and every female in my family is very much an artist. So one of the things she's taken on is staging the houses. And when she stages the houses, we put prices on everything in there, and the people that come to visit and walk through can decide to purchase that for the family that's going to live there.
Because I work with the homeowners and I try to decorate it in a way that they actually want, in the things that they're actually needing. They're like, I'm going to check my old couch, I need a new couch, and I really want it to be white. My current homeowner is like, I just want a white couch, I just want a white couch. I'm like, you got it, you're gonna get a white couch, babe. So, yeah.
And what percent of the stuff that we had put in Cruise did we actually end up?
Well, I sold everything that she wanted. They got everything they wanted. Yeah, there was like, I think the green chair in that photo is the only thing that she was like, no thanks, not for me. So we didn't sell that one, but yeah. Yeah.
Going above and beyond.
And I'm sorry, and I hate to cut you off.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, but I do know, I can feel over here that we're running overtime.
Sure.
We have a few more guests, but do you have some closing points or something that you can leave with us?
Yeah.
Because I know, and I can tell we're very interested in what you're doing. It makes perfect
Do you have a
sense, and
specific
you're right.
ask of
It's
the
in
task
alignment.
force of how, I mean, it sounds like you need funding, but is there?
No, well, I don't. I should ask the director of operations. As the secretary, I came saying, you need to know what we're doing because I think you'd appreciate what we're doing. And the more that people know what we're doing and are aware of what we're doing, the more support we'll have and the faster we will grow and the more we'll be able to affect. It takes a lot to keep these neighborhoods intact. And if we can only do 1 or 2 houses in a year, then we're not gonna keep up with gentrification. And we are, realtors don't like us because we bring the property value down daily.
It's unsettling.
And yet we have some that secretly support us because they love what we're doing.
Yeah, I would say our ask right now is our wait list is insane and we are having a hard time finding properties. So if you guys have connections to people who are wanting to sell their home or have this house that, you know, their late grandmother left them or something like that, we wanna work with them and either get new homeowners into houses or help people, you know, find their next avenue. And so if it could be something where we take it and then we just push it forward to the next guy who's grown up in 5 Points or wherever, you know, that's what we want to do. So yeah, so my ask would be, please help me find properties. I need houses.
And Pinnacle Bank is totally behind us. They're totally behind what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for allowing us to do this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There's a list coming around. If you're interested in joining their voting list and getting more information and share properties, I was calling in my own block. I think there are a couple. So just fill that out as it comes around. But our next guest, friend of mine, I was looking for her, but she was hiding. And there she is, Dr. Kelly Drummond from the city of Knoxville, HR director, and she's going to talk to us about Title VI and how they're connected to our work with equity. Oh, wow.
I'm going to give you back your time because I'm just going to be very brief as I talk about Title VI and talk about the connection with you all and the potential with the city. As I think about Title VI, Title VI works within the federal government. So when you have an employer that receives federal funds, you have to think about Title VI. And Title VI means that you cannot discriminate based on certain ideas and certain sections, and I'll read that specifically with you. My job within the city of Knoxville is to serve as the Title VI compliance officer. I am the Director of Human Resources with the city of Knoxville, and in November of 2023, the city of Knoxville made some changes to allow for the Department of Human Resources to take on this responsibility. Prior to that, you all may know that Dr. Charles Lomax did it over there, so hello, when he was at the city as well. And prior to that, it was Tasha Harris that did it at the city. So in 2023, with the changes that have taken place, the city of Knoxville decided to put it in a different location, and that location is within the Human Resource Department, where we have approximately 9 staff that are available to help in the compliance issues and to deal with that. I wanted to share with you all, and the reason that I'm here is to talk a little bit about our internal equity committee and what we would like to see happen and hopefully have some involvement with you all. As part of Title VI in compliance, we're responsible for doing LEP, which is Limited English Proficiency. And so if you all were aware, a few weeks ago, we had an officer, Antoine, that was, he died recently, and he was from Haiti. one of the things that the city of Knoxville had to do was to ensure that individuals, he spoke a very specific dialect. And what we had to do was ensure that individuals from his family, from the community that came and participated or wanted to be part of the funeral could understand. And so that's when you think about what Title VI does. That's the easiest way to understand it in most recent terms. So we are responsible for making sure that anyone that has any service within the city of Knoxville, that they have their rights met. And so we cannot discriminate because of language, because of disability, because any of those types of services, and because of race, any of those things. So part of what we did in this process was to have an internal equity committee to look at DE&I services within the city of Knoxville. The city of Knoxville, this started, I believe, prior to Mayor Kincannon's regime and when she was there. And so this internal equity committee started looking at the services that were going on within the city and how our employees were working to ensure diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging within the city of Knoxville. The committee is, I've asked your chairperson, I guess, I'm not sure the correct title. Facilitator. Your facilitator to co-chair with me on the committee, and that's Tiffany Davidson. I've asked her to serve because our employees need to get back involved. And part of what I've also asked as part of my funding within the city of Knoxville and the Human Resource Department was additional funding to help to offset, to bring in a facilitator to look at some of the things that we need within the city of Knoxville. That's how I would love to find a way to get involved with you all, is through our internal equity committee. And I would love to have some involvement as we think about the employees within the city of Knoxville. When I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think about not only when I look at it from race or gender or those types of things, but I also think about it as someone who just had a total knee replacement, and as I limp up here and I've been off of a cane in the last week. I think about that because people who work within our city, and I'll tell you this real quickly, as I park in the city county building and I have to walk to the elevators to get to the 5th floor, I never realized that it was a walk. I never realized the journey that you had to take until I was unable to walk. And so we don't think about sometimes some of the issues that individuals have to face. As I park here and I have a sticker to park, it is very important that we make sure our services are available. And we don't think about these things when you're able-bodied. But thinking about this, how do our employees get involved and how are employees getting to think about this? And from an internal equity committee, we're looking at including services about surveys. What do we need? You all may hear that when we think about recruitment and retention of employees, when you think about the Knoxville Police Department, there's so few minorities that work and only one woman of color that works in the Knoxville Police Department. We have to do things differently. I know that the police chief thinks about that, but we also have to think about this in terms of KFD and all of our other departments. When we think about engineering, you all talked about that. And so we would love to figure out opportunities to partner and to participate with you all as we look at this. We want to increase our recruitment efforts. We want to ensure that we think about these things within the city of Knoxville. So we ask for partnership opportunities. So thank you. I don't know if there are any questions, but thank you very much.
Are there any questions? And so Tiffany, you're co-chairing this committee?
Yes. We'll start back this spring, and so we'll bring things, I'll ask Tiffany to bring things back to you all, but I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about Title VI being in human resources now. We are going to make a very concerted effort to be much more involved and to do some things a little bit differently and to ask for assistance. So we appreciate your assistance.
Okay.
Thank you. All
right, so Rebecca, Jane Justice, Chief of Urban Design and Development, and I think, have we talked before, but here with the city of Knoxville to share some information about Reconnecting Communities Grant, which we're all very excited about. The KCDC in partnership and the city were awarded by the Department of Transportation. So also Ben Bentley and Marissa Mollison, help me. Is that right, close?
You're good.
All right, are here from KCDC. So if you want to present or share with us.
Here we go.
Be happy
Come
to
to the
hear.
podium.
Yeah.
Podiums are good. How y'all doing? I've already asked for grace from a couple of individual members. To have to follow Dr. Drummond is always a tough act. So. Also, Madam Chair, I now see the board that you have to wrangle on a regular basis, so well done there.
They're the ones doing the right thing.
Are they? I wasn't gonna say that.
I said it for them, y'all can stop with it.
So it's really an honor and privilege to get to present to you all on what is a very exciting opportunity. I know Marissa's gonna chime in with the actual information. She has, I think, spoken with y'all on 2 different occasions about the opportunity. A little bit of background. Wait, I'm Ben and you're...
I'm RJ.
And I know you introduced us, we're silly sometimes. So a little bit of background to make sure we all level set. The Biden administration did a major infrastructure bill in 2022. Reconnecting Communities was a pilot program. It really sought to, if not physically tear down the barriers in the form of legacy infrastructure that divided communities, to at least make meaningful connections to mitigate some of the consequences of those historic investments. 2020, so we submitted an application. First time that competition had ever come up. We were not successful, but we debriefed with the Department of Transportation. They said, way to go, y'all had a great application. We only had $200 million in funding nationwide, so it just wasn't that much. Fast forward to 2023, they lumped in another program, and I'm gonna read it or I'll forget the governmental acronym. So Neighborhood Access and Equity Program funding was combined with Reconnecting, a much larger pot of money. We resubmitted a very similar proposal, and I should full stop here and say thank you so much for your support. The letter that you all provided and the work that you're doing in this community really does lay the foundation, the framework for us being successful in these large federal efforts. So that's on y'all. I don't want to ask you to clap for yourselves, but it is a big deal. So thank you for that. Yeah, well, you can clap. So the notice of funding availability was both those programs. One of the things that it asked us to do was we had to identify a dividing facility. And they defined dividing facility as a surface transportation facility that created obstacles to connectivity. I know that people that live in this community can immediately identify multiples of those, but the ones that came to mind that really stood out were obviously James White Parkway, Summit Hill, and then some of the other connections in that same area that were built under urban renewal. So, it's probably a $500 million project to take James White down. That didn't feel like something that the feds were going to fund. But there were several existing interventions in the community that were either partially funded, fully funded, or not funded at all that were really going to be able to mitigate in certain areas the lack of connectivity. And for me, KCDC, providing better connections to the folks at First Creek at Austin, to the Vista at Summit Hill. I know these are LHP properties I'm talking about now, but what was formerly Arbor Place, now Pinnacle Park, Studio 1100, formerly Townview Towers. Like, those are the folks that we want to serve. And there are along Summit Hill, the Beck Cultural Corridor, I'm just going to name a few, access from Morningside back to Urban Wilderness Gateway Park, better connections via First Creek Greenway connector from Austin to the multipurpose stadium to the old city. These represent meaningful access for folks that don't have vehicles. And we know, Marissa really conducted it for us because she does all the work on behalf of me. Thank you. We know that residents at our properties tend to have, about half of them own cars, which you can do the math there. There's a lot of folks that are relying on either public transit or walkability to get where they need to be. So the bolstering of these connections through this grant opportunity, it's going to be good for all the folks. It's going to be good for the future of sustainability and resilient infrastructure in Knoxville, but also more importantly, the low and moderate income families that we serve, it's going to be good for them as well. I'm gonna stop for a minute. I don't wanna just keep rambling and then questions from the group.
Where can we access the master plan for these, for the connection?
That's a great question. Do you wanna cover that? You know that better than I do.
Well, we have full access to the grant application materials on KCDC's website. We are working now to create an implementation plan and a next steps plan where we will highlight what the planning process is for each of the segments on how we can implement that and continue the planning process and what a timeline might look like. So as far as a master plan that shows what segments are funded, we have that available now through the full grant application. But soon to come will be an implementation plan and a next steps guide.
And that will also be on the KCDC website once it's put together.
Yes, and we will keep you all informed.
Go on.
No, I just recall them saying there were 7 phases. Are those phases available?
Well, there are 7 pieces to the puzzle of the grant
Okay,
application. And so seven components of the application that have dollar amounts tied to each of them.
Okay.
How we phase those out and how some of them might get lumped together naturally to do further planning, further public engagement, and just how they are executed construction in the most efficient way. There might be 3 phases, 12 phases, but there were 7 segments, so that's where that number 7 kind of comes from.
And one thing we would do, I was being silly asking for grace earlier, but patience, we have not even seen what this DOT grant agreement will look like. So from a timing standpoint, we can make estimates and we want to be fully forthcoming, but to say we don't know is the most honest thing I can say right now.
So, will there be an opportunity for a group like us to get involved in your tremendous?
That was a great question. So the short answer is yes.
Yes.
Yes, she said it, you heard it here first. The slightly longer answer, as part of the application, we embedded within this, and I'm not sure if it was a DOT requirement or if we just thought it was good practice, or probably both, to have an advisory committee. One of your members, and y'all can fight out over it, or maybe it's a short straw situation, I don't know, would represent this, and it's everyone that submitted a meaningful letter of support for this grant application. So there's, don't hold me to it, about 10 parties that would be represented on this advisory committee, and one of those members would absolutely be from this group. But we also recognize that, you know, you may not want to carry the whole bit of water for the whole group, so we'll have touch points along the way with you all just to hear feedback and also to provide project updates.
Now, the second part of the question is, I know you presented to us, is there an opportunity for the task force to get a $45 million grant or something that we can
But we're
work on?
gonna vote on that. We are, that's up for vote. If it's not on this meeting, I did have an opportunity to speak with Mayor Kincannon. And so we're gonna talk about how actually this grant and our letter, because it is in direct alignment with our mission and goal of reinvestment in East Knoxville. And so I think we have a very good opportunity and chance there to count a significant part and to work with them to help support the investment, have some buy-in through the advisory committee, and then I believe we will help capture voices of the community to share with them as well as this is being developed, because it's still at the beginning phases. So since we don't have the stone set, we have a great opportunity to work with them to really influence how these plans move forward. Am I correct in saying?
No, you were on point. I'm gonna shut up and not say.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Have anything to share additionally today?
Okay. That comes out very well.
Okay.
I do have one question. Are there other grants like this that the task force could be helpful to you in securing? And you have, granted, you had 10 other organizations, the work, Marissa, that you presented, the underlying merits of the application were obviously meaningful, but I also think, hopefully the task force's support and mission provided some incremental lift to that. Are there other grants that y'all are pursuing that we could be helpful to the city securing?
I think yes. So a good example was the aforementioned 8 million Safe Streets for All. That one is funded. There is a future competition coming up very soon. And I know that the city of Knoxville will be making an application. There's 3 different categories, so we're not competing against each other. KCDC will more than likely be putting in an application. So yes, there are upcoming opportunities, and we'll try to give y'all plenty of runway to be able to understand and ask questions about those and any support that you're willing to provide, because like you said, y'all are much more in touch. I mean, I'd love to be in touch with all the community, and I'm just bad at it. But I know that y'all are boots on the ground in many cases, and you hear from people, and we want to be in lockstep.
Congratulations.
Good work. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Alright, so we're going to move forward with business, and we have a couple of items to vote on. We have also an event sponsorship request. I did mention, I need to put out early, I believe, for you to have to take over, but I'm gonna move through as much as I can prior to that, particularly as we get to the vote. So we might want to switch some things around a little bit. May I ask that we table the announcements until after the vote? All right. So the 2 items up for vote.
Co-chair nomination
All right.
and event sponsorships.
Okay. So co-chair nomination, so Matthew Best has stepped down from his seat from the task force. He's relocating, and he, received an opportunity, a great opportunity in Memphis. And we thank him for his time and commitment here and helping us, all of us who were in this initial establishment where we didn't even have a, charter or anything, officer. So it was, I think everyone who's contributed has offered so much value. But per our bylaws, we must have a task force member service coaches, and you all would definitely want that. Sure, trust me. So therefore, I'm going to nominate Stanley as co-chair. But we can discuss that, and I guess if he declined, which I won't look at him, so we'll see. But Stanley has been a consistent presence, and in my opinion has offered really some wisdom and experience to our conversations, and has often given us a different way to think about things, and that's what we need, some contrast to balance out our thoughts. So I'm going to nominate Stanley. Do we have any other nominations? It's looking good, Stanley. Stanley, would you? But that's like we're just not even gonna ask. You didn't give me a chance. So I'm gonna pass my treats down now. And based on this nomination, before we vote, would you be willing to accept? Okay. So now that the nomination is put forward, do I just need a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. I think it all went together really quickly. And
Was that Dave that seconded?
yes.
All right, vote.
All right.
You gotta take a vote.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Don't look at me. Good. We're very good. Thank you, Stanley. Thank you so much. And then our second order would be these event sponsorship requests. So the Knoxville Black Maternal Health Symposium, that is one. And is someone here, or do we have, did you send it?
Yeah, I sent everything in the email, but if you have questions, I'm happy to give a summary if need be.
And what we would need to determine is the amount that we're willing to donate for this symposium. And I will say, as you consider it, think about the alignment with our framework, and maybe I should share all of them first before we make the decision. So the second request is from the Knoxville Area Urban League's Young Professionals leadership conference and scholarship luncheon. Again, we would need to determine the amount that we could provide for them. And then the third is the alumni of Austin and Austin East Schools alumni reunion. And this request was put forth by George Underwood. Now, in the request, were there, if it was in the email, please forgive me, specific asks? Okay, so they're all open asks?
All open asks. So for the Black Maternal Health Symposium, their total is $7,600.
Is that their total budget or?
The total, yeah, total budget. So there's packages. They
Okay.
have 4 keynote speakers that they would all love to provide funding for. So just kind of an honorarium for speaking, travel expenses, and accommodations. So that totals $7,600.
Okay.
And then for the Knox Area Urban League Young Professionals, there's a couple of different sponsorship levels. The highest being $10,000. For community builder, legacy supporters $5,000, friend of the cause is $2,500, and community supporter is an optional amount.
Okay.
And then for the alumni Austin East event, I will refer to George because I know that there is kind of a platinum, gold, silver, and bronze level sponsorships.
Yeah, and what this event is, and let me just kind of talk about it briefly. Some of you are familiar with it. Every 5 years, there's a celebration. Austin High School, when Black could only go to Austin High School, was created. Austin eventually became Austin East. Every 5 years, that centennial is celebrated. In 2019, we had 1,100 people. This year, we're planning for 1,200 people. These are mainly alums of Austin East. There are different opportunities with this. I don't know how much money or how we're going to divvy it up. You can do a sponsorship to your question, Tiffany. The platinum is $6,500. What makes it different is for this book, there will be another book also published this time. Nikki Giovanni was on the back cover in 2019. The platinum space is this space. And so there's an opportunity for the task force to have a presence. The most prominent presence is here, but there are, you can do ads with different sponsorships. Come tables or tickets, so you can, task force could have a table with 10 seats on it and be at the event at the convention center.
What's the table? What's the table cost?
A table, just a table itself would cost $1,000. It's $100 per ticket. But with the different sponsorships, platinum $6,500, you get 2 tables. Gold $5,000, you get a table and some other ads, that type of thing. Silver $2,500, bronze $1,000. So those are the different levels of sponsorship. But I would hope that we could be represented in this. Because like I said, it's a beautiful thing. When you go into the convention center and you have 1,200 people in the convention center, and this is the takeaway.
Do you have a date on that again?
July 6th.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Someone sent me something earlier.
Okay. Did you have something like that?
I was just going to say, she didn't come here for this, but if you have questions about the Young Professionals event, Starts is on our staff and is also a part of the professionals and can answer questions if you have specific questions about that. Even though she didn't know she was gonna have to do that when she came here.
So the questions I have aren't related to a specific thing. I think for me, I'm a little familiar with most and find the value for our community and supporting them, but we need to know the time. So, like, do these all need to be voted on today? Because one, I want to assess our budget and see what we wanted to distribute, and also thinking about this event, we're moving forward, we have money for that. So which of these items do we need to move on, like, today?
Definitely the first 2.
The first 2. All right. Then my second question would be, we would probably need some type of proposal. I jotted down some numbers, but I'm gonna leave it up to the committee to propose the amount of support. And then, I don't know if you all wanna look at how much we have first or work backwards.
Have we used
a lot of money.
No.
We've not used a lot, and quite honestly.
You have a lot.
Let me say,
No.
we have a deadline. So if any money needs to be spent, it has to be spent pretty much before the end of May,
All right, very good.
for this fiscal year. So go ahead, Anderson.
I was gonna say, without knowing the budget, I was gonna throw out maybe
Sound like a
$1
good-
piece.
Yeah, well, I have a little bit more than that, but tell me again for the, what I had down was 1,000 for the Black Maternal Health Symposium, 2,500 for Knoxville Area Urban League, and then another 2,500 for the Austin East Reunion. If we can inflate that some, then let's just take it up a level. But I mean, I'm really relying on your discussion and what you all want to support in that.
Tiffany, what did you say we had to have it spent before?
Before the end of May.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
How much do we have to have spent before the end of May?
So
Good.
currently,
She has more.
well, not currently, because I'm looking at through the end of January. And I don't anticipate there's been a large amount of money spent
No.
since then. We are, sorry, and a few things are kind of in not. You still have over $200,000 that you have not.
Now let's run this back.
Allocated to anything in particular. Now, if there are
Use
specific,
it or lose it, or will it carry on?
yes, no,
It will
they're operating, they're in operating funds, and so they don't
roll.
they don't roll over.
So let me say this, what we need to do also is this by our next meeting. And I will make a committed effort, if there are other similar investments that we can make for things going on in the community, and go ahead and invest in those. And I think that's goodwill, and I think that's what we should do. That's one thing. 2, we can up it a little bit. 3, if we can go ahead and plan this information meeting. And at least pay for some things right now that we know we will need to pull this day off in
And
partnership.
it doesn't have to happen before
Right,
June.
we just need to be
But if
spent.
if there are
Has to
funds
be
that need to be
allocated.
encumbered before June 30.
Got it.
I think also as in part of why we, I think the framework helps us in a lot of regards, but a good reason to have the framework is it helps us to assess what our priorities are. And so whether it is, through event sponsorships or things like that, which, going forward may represent a much smaller segment of task force spending, but as you think about programs that other organizations are already implementing that help to support some of the goals of the program, do we want to look at, developing some type of process for helping to fund some of those types of programs so that it doesn't necessarily have to be a program that the task force is creating in and of itself,
Right.
but it could be that we provide funding opportunities to shore up and build capacity for some of the work that supports the goals in your framework, in addition to like event sponsorships and things like that.
So that's ideal.
Yeah.
That's ideal, that we don't reinvent the wheel, that we support and build capacity that already exists. Urban League, the housing programs that you have. So what I'm trying to think about is as we anticipate this partnership, how we can go ahead and invest from our end and help build or add on to what you all are already doing. We don't have to decide that today. I'm just thinking of all the things we need to do between now and June to support the goals of the framework, and that would be one. If we could get with your people and figure out how we can, support and invest in that. For the immediate, can I get a proposal on the amount for each of these 3? I just gave a base. We can go up or down from there.
I'd like to ask you a question. Could we not only do what you're asking us to do tonight, but at least if we're gonna have something like that, event sponsorships, put a dollar amount on event sponsorships. Say, I'm just throwing out a figure, 25,000 for event sponsorships. And then, of course, you've asked about the Urban League and the housing investment. But I think it's important that we just kind of earmarked and put monies, you know, and maybe everything doesn't have to happen tonight. But if we could even think about how we want to do it, but I think it's important that we actually put dollar amounts to different, you know,
So budget these
housing,
buckets.
yeah,
Okay.
business or whatever.
The other thing I wanted to ask, if we could get an application funding request form, so to speak. It doesn't have to be overly complicated, but something within the legal realm, since we are under the city, that we could accept a funding request. So some of these questions and some of these little nuances we would get in that application as far as the what, when, where, why types of things, and then we can vote moving forward.
Good.
Are we saying by next meeting, have a list of other organizations that we may possibly, or did we have a different date than next month?
I just said if we can start pitching some by next month. I don't think that's the end, but definitely by June. But if next month you have something, let's go ahead and bring. In fact, if you have something prior to the meeting, if you send it to Tiffany, with Tiffany, okay, send it to Tiffany, then we can already have it ready. And if we need additional information, that can be gathered before our meeting and before the vote.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
Another statement or question, what can this go to the investment committee to do? I mean, we're talking about work that we could do prior to, or do you just want us to just, you know, throw out?
No, I think so,
Come to the investment committee and then they come back with recommendations.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we do it at KBB even, and not to bring that in, but the process is similar. We get a lot of requests, and there's a committee that will look through what we've done and all of that, make sure there's no conflict of interest. There are a lot of things to consider with that, right? And then they bring recommendations to the full group. So I think a similar process, and what will be helpful though, is if we have the buckets already for the investment committee, right? So we will already know, okay, we have this already allocated from the housing bucket or the education bucket or the event. And then we want to leave that bucket for building capacity with programs that are working already in the community. And we'll look at each one. I do believe in investing in people who have some evidence that they are making an impact, and there might be different conversations we need to have around that, but I think that would be part of the application.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if we got that money that we gotta use. I really like this Renaissance creation.
I do
because,
too.
And they're in the community, and they need some properties to be identified. And if we can identify properties in the community right now that could benefit from what they do, isn't that consistent with what we do?
Oh, it's absolutely consistent. I think that we can, that might take a little more thought. We can probably do that the next meeting, to think about how that.
I'm saying before we lose this money.
Yeah, no, that's why I said by next meeting.
Okay.
No, because I was gonna send them my address, but,
Let's use an
oh, you hadn't seen what the story did. But my point is, y'all know what happens after y'all ready. My point is, I think we can really think about what we can invest in, but this is something that needs to be known. And this needs, you know, because I think it's one of those things that will get other people involved.
Yes.
I think we need to be intentional about looking particularly at the area from here to the stadium. And we need to just send your scouts out, whatever that needs to look like. So short answer is yes. Longer answer is I think we need to really be intentional about how we can maximize the support for them. And, you know, even with volunteers, I can imagine so many things, but as they take volunteers, and we have the young professionals, we have national achievers, you have several groups at schools in this community, because one thing we gotta do is keep that going. That cycle of giving back and investing in your community. So groups that we can give the opportunity to, I've never heard of them. I might have picked up a paintbrush or a brick or something, you know, and so we wanna make sure that we can do that properly. This is short and easy in my opinion. I will have to leave and I'm gonna need to vote. So, what are the amounts that we propose for these three?
What was your recommendation?
My recommendation was 2,000 for the Black Maternal Health Support, well, it was 1,000, okay. So it's 2,000 for, and that should pay for one of their speakers. I'm flexible, you know. And then I had 2,500 for the Young Professionals Leadership Conference and Sponsorship Luncheon. But let me ask this, what was the next level?
It was 5,000 and then after that, I believe it's 10,000.
What do you get for the 5?
So for the 5,000, we'd be able to host the students. The College of Business has gifted us the space at UT. What's uncovered is the food to provide for everyone that day, the plaques or awards for all of our speakers or some type of gifting to our speakers for coming into the space. We don't have the funds for our keynote speaker that day. And then outside of that would be any type of welcome bags, gift bags to the people that are participating in that.
And what I was, thank you for that, well, speaking of, are the sponsorship, so what are the naming opportunities? What's the promotion? So where could we be featured as supporting this event? You know, is it on bags, shirts, or
Any and everything that you just named. So part of what we'll have as a part of that event is our scholarships for students who are pursuing some type of degree in health science. And so we will be listing all of our sponsors at the beginning, during the lunch, before we do the award ceremony, and then again at the end. So we can list it there, we can put it on the bags if that's one of the things we're hoping to obtain on the bags, and having our sponsors listed there as well.
All right, so I think we have to be careful to be listed as a scholarship sponsor.
Well, the scholarships are already
taken care of.
Yeah, they have
I just want to make sure.
Yes, that came from a different funding.
Because that's opening up a whole new can of worms that we would have to think about. But as far as event sponsorship, I started with 2,500, but would it feel free to offer another suggestion?
I think 2,500 is still.
Okay. All right. And then I wrote down all the amounts. I definitely wanted to have a table. We can go ahead and spend the money, but we have, how much does it cost to get my picture? I mean, not my picture. Y'all know what happens after six. What happens, how much is it to be recognized as what's the amount?
All right, if it's platinum sponsor, it's 6,500.
6,500, okay.
For the platinum, for this.
Can we, was the city a sponsorship, a sponsor before?
I'm trying to do it for the vote, so.
Oh, okay, was the city a sponsor?
You're good, we have enough for quorum.
Do we?
There's 6.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was the city a sponsor before?
Not a sponsor, we took out an ad.
I'm just wondering if we could split it.
No, I don't think we should do that.
Keep it ourselves, all right. So I definitely wanted to have a table, and then I think you said there was that's 5,000, 2,500, and 1,000. What's the 2,500 is?
Full-page ad in the book, table 10, listed as a silver sponsor.
That's what I'm saying.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. So the
what was for the Urban League? What did you say?
2,500. So the amounts are.
Excuse me. With that, just need to get the ad, whatever ad you want to put together. We have a
logo.
We have a logo. We typically work with our comms department, and Tanisha has been a great help in previous ads and sponsorships. So we'll just
our graphic artist needs to get it by the 31st.
Of this month.
This month, yeah.
We can take, I mean, we have one, we can just tweak it. I think we had one for the MLK commemorative book, so we can get you something.
Will we not want to possibly take a professional picture altogether as the task force? I mean, I think that's something probably.
That'd be powerful.
It would be.
That'd be very powerful.
if we can, see if we can get that scheduled by the 31st,
Y'all might need to go outside on the brick wall.
right now. Not after 6. But we can see if we can get that scheduled. I do like that, but even if we had our individual, headshots, and could just put them in rows, we could do that for the meantime, and then let's think about getting a group picture scheduled. I was thinking about this earlier, that what we are to the task force and falling under Gwen's vision is pretty historic. And we do need to capture this some kind of way, but even if our headshots can be a part of that for this particular book. All right, so I start, now I'm at, so 2,000, 2,500, and 2,500. Do we need to vote separately or as a package?
Package.
Okay.
Let's move.
You move, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Any questions, conversation, everybody's good with that? All right.
Who said?
So-
Who said?
I did.
Oh, okay.
We need to talk. It's a lot of stuff that I spit out that was toiling around in my head as far as our partnership with the Urban League, and from that to Renaissance, to photos, to these buckets, to a application, a funding request application. Cause there's some people who give $500 and they'll move mountains, you know, I mean, there are some people really doing some grassroots, work in the community. Okay. Anything, oh, I got this in the stand, you don't have to take it. I'm gonna tell you what's left.
Just pass it over, Wilson. What'd you say?
This is quick on me. I'm so amused right now.
Well, that's what I seek out.
Just pass over the agenda. Alright, so just to kind of keep things moving, and what we'll do is we will parking lot, kind of have another topic, and that is for us to discuss, the task force meeting schedule. But I think that it's important for obviously Janisha to be here and then, Anderson, so we'll table that for next month. But, one of the things that we do need to go ahead and try to identify, at least a portion of it, is the working groups. So, you wanna read that, you want me to?
Discussion to identify individuals, agencies that could potentially serve in an investment area working group. We want to touch on each of the investment areas one by one and ask that TIP task force members offer suggestions. So like small business development, entrepreneurship, home ownership, and workforce equity.
Yeah, so what we'll do is just, thinking of each of those investment areas, just shoot out some agencies, entities, individuals. Tanisha, please send me your recommendations. I'll get with you later. But, so that we can go ahead and start communicating with them, because we do want to get the working groups identified as well as meeting by mid-spring, if at all possible. So, we'll start with small business development and entrepreneurship. Who are the people or agencies that we want to have a representative on that working group?
You want to try to come up with those interactively now, or do you have like a straw man in y'all's heads of who you'd like to, or is that literally just a blank slate at this point?
Just blank slate at this point. I mean, if anything, it can kind of just get the conversation going, and if we need to revisit it, that's possible. But right now, we don't necessarily have anything, especially set in stone. No conversations have been had other than with KUB, because we were talking about something completely different, and they are interested in serving, kind of on that home ownership, possibly the workforce equity piece. But again,
Now, we'll excuse me, Tiff, will, task force member be heading up one of these?
that'd be great. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, that's the plan.
okay.
I mean, in the perfect scenario, what we would like to have is for a task force member to serve as the lead of each of these working groups, just to obviously have some sense of ownership. You will lead the group, help work, you work with us to develop an agenda, so forth and so on. So yes, the task force members do need to kind of pick an area that they do want to serve in.
Well, small business is definitely my area, so I don't mind serving as the person who's over the small business working group.
Anyone interested in homeownership?
And these are groups that would
I don't have anybody in mind.
It's okay, it's okay.
be identified, these groups would be identifying initiatives or possibly I'm trying to think of whether we're gonna have the same issue we had when we had all the discussion a year or so ago around the fiscal sponsor. Like, do we want to avoid groups that would be potentially the beneficiaries of task force investments, or
Yes.
as a guiding principle, or
Yeah.
or do we care?
I think that's a really good point. And I think just from a conflict of interest standpoint, I think it's best to steer clear of that.
Right.
So if at all possible, I think that we need to try to not identify those entities. But, you know, if it comes up, and that's just a larger conversation that we need to have, but I do think that it will cause issues in the future.
I would agree, but I'm struggling with if you don't use people that are already doing it.
That's
Okay, so then how do you put what is the parameters? You know, I think those are, you have to have some type of, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it comes down to a vote, if there's ever a vote, which I don't think there would be, there may be recommendations. Do they play a part in that?
And I think if you left it at just all their power is a recommendation, period, that conflict diminishes.
Yeah, and so you would bring the recommendation, hypothetically speaking,
Right. And then
to the task force.
And then the task force still is responsible to do whatever with that recommendation. It's just a recommendation.
Yeah, well then if that's the case, then, well, that was easy.
I think that makes sense.
Call.
What are the three working groups again?
Small business development and entrepreneurship is one. Home ownership is two. Workforce equity is three.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have an interest in serving on workforce equity or home ownership? Maybe we can just start there.
Home ownership.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help with that one.
Okay.
And to me, that's a kind of, without necessarily throwing out names, I mean, it'd be helpful to have a realtor in there. It'd probably be helpful to have, I think about more of the categories, and maybe we could do that as a follow-up item as to that. Whether we start to throw out names here, or even there's so many different entities that are connected to homeownership. I would just be pulling stuff out of thin air at this point. So I'd like to be more thoughtful, but maybe we kind of think about, here's the attributes of the kind of person, the kind of people we would like on that group.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can think about some things that go with it.
Okay, that sounds good.
So we have Brandon and Dave Miller?
Yeah.
Will we have an email or something wrapped up to give the invitation to the people that we identify?
Yeah, that's the next part.
Okay.
So kind of the questions that we have that have been asked so far, you can kind of take that one by one if you want.
We're gonna be asking, what is the requirement? And that's, what are we asking them to commit to, time-wise? Okay, we gotta make some decisions on that. What specific skills, background, experience should someone interested in joining a working group possess? They want each of the task force members to sit on one of the three working groups, and we gotta determine how many people should be in each group, and if that matters.
Those are kind of some starters for us. I think that the big question that I've received so far is what's the time? How often are we meeting, or how often would the group meet? Possibly for how long would be a thing. So would it be a monthly working group meeting, or would it be a bi-monthly? What are your thoughts on that?
I think bi-monthly would be an easy ask from
Okay.
4 volunteers. That's just my recommendation.
I agree with that.
You guys agree with that?
Yeah, my sense is we would make, it's already getting challenging enough, I think, with the meetings that we have. But my thought would be, we seem to have more success when we get together for a little bit longer periods of time, but trying to get together an hour a month is not likely to be, to me, is maybe as productive as whether it's once a quarter and, get together for a couple hours and try to power through a whole bunch of. But anyway, I would think meet longer for fewer number of times.
Yeah.
Would be my advice.
Okay.
That'd be better for.
So quarterly, I'm getting quarterly as well. How do you guys feel about quarterly versus bi-monthly? Sure feelings?
No.
What we could do is get started. I think that's the important part, is to get started. And then if we want to kind of assess from there, we could potentially move it to a quarterly thing. You know, we have the framework, and that's the big part. Based off of the framework, is we've developed this, now we have to have the working group help us determine the action items.
Right.
And so you guys have already kind of talked about estate planning and so forth and so on, but there's so much more that needs to be determined as well, so.
So as task force members and working in these committees, what restrictions do we have, if any?
As relates to communication with these working
Yes.
groups? I don't think
Because,
that.
I mean, we're not supposed to talk between meetings and things of this sort. Where does that fall? Right, but where does the sunshine law fall within these working groups? It's in essence what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I would imagine that it would not necessarily still be difficult. So let's take Dave and Brandon, for example. Let's say that Brandon takes the lead on what this looks like. More than likely, Dave is going to send a recommendation to me, and then I'm going to, communicate with Brandon. But for the most part, I would be the point of contact for Brandon. I would be the point of contact for Deb. But as it relates to any type of sunshine outside of that, say that there's only you that's working on the small business development for right now.
Well, you just couldn't speak if it was gonna be a vote.
If there's going to be a vote, yeah, but for example, she could send out an email as long as there's no other task force members on that working group.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's
so
just-
Brandon, he would not send out an email for homeownership because so you would send your communication to me and I would send it on your behalf. If that makes sense, there's just differences.
You could, it's just a meeting or something, but not any
business.
not any decision.
Yeah,
Right.
just info sharing.
Right.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it would be similar to your committee structure now, just with other people. So there would be discussion, dialogues, information sharing, for the purposes of coming back, I think, with recommendations to the committee to vote on. And so there could be discussion in that way, but you can't have kind of that deliberation for the purposes of deciding how you're gonna vote.
Correct.
So help me understand, the working groups that you're talking about and the committees that we already have, are they still gonna continue or not? They are?
No, I would disagree with what you're saying. I mean, you have to take into consideration, you have your formal task force meeting, you have committee meetings, then you have workforce, or.
All right, that's why I'm silent, and I'm volunteering.
I feel like your executive committee is something that
Remains
needs
the
to
same.
remain, but maybe rethink whether or not there's a role or functionality in having the other committees also. If
The
you
only
have
thing
these
is,
working.
I think we need to move forward on the educational piece that we're talking, so
Yeah,
we need a vehicle.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to ask, is the vehicle gonna be
The
the committee or is it gonna be?
By Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, the working group will be the vehicle. So yeah, I mean, I love the idea of the committees kind of absolving into the working groups, but kind of as we were talking earlier about the investment committee and the community engagement committee working on one of the projects.
Yeah, the rest of it
that
definitely
was-
doesn't need to go anywhere, we need to keep.
Yeah, so that's the thing, which ones remain the same versus which ones absolve. Yeah. So how about this? How about if someone would be interested in taking on the workforce equity piece, and then we can just revisit this next month, when we have more voices and kind of that. Yeah, we're starting a couple folks. Any interest? We can table it as well. Table? Alright. Alright, sounds good. Alright, well, in the meantime, if you guys would just kind of give some thought to some potential agencies and so forth, that could serve in these investment areas, I think that would be a good place to start when we come back together as a group of people.
I think a 2-year ask for our volunteers. I guess we'll table whether it be bi-monthly or quarterly.
Sounds good. Alright,
What else you got?
you wanna Does anyone have any announcements, community announcements?
Well, I wanted to, I had a meeting with Tyree Smalls, University of Tennessee, and he kind of told me about their flagship program and their flagship schools here in Knoxville. And I don't know if that's something that the task force would be interested in, maybe piggybacking and partnering with the University of Tennessee, but they already identified a bunch of schools that in our identified communities, Fulton, Austin East, and Central, I believe are their flagship, offer scholarships. I don't know what or how, but I thought we could coordinate, at least have them come out and speak and kind of what they're doing and maybe see how we can help out and piggyback on that.
Okay. I'll reach out to you and then we can connect with Tucky and maybe see if you can come speak. True.
I'm ready.
So moved.
So moved. Do I get a second to adjourn the meeting?